This is Gemara Menachos, Daf Kuf Dalid. We're holding on Kuf Gimel and Beis. We are two lines before the white lines. Amar Rabibi, Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. We're continuing a discussion, really a sadistic detail about Kachi Mida Shel Chachamim. And this is one of those things that probably, if you think about it, has plagued you your whole life. What's pshat? A revius is kiddush, a dot less is not. A mikvos for Isa, a dot less is not. So we learned kachi mida shel chacham. So says the Gemara, we're now going to take a bit of a, we can call it a right or a left turn, as we're going to dive deeply in figuring out all different types of midas and how it works out. So says the Gemara, two lines from the wide lines, and actually I should pause. Today's share is a special share dedicated by a close friend of the Daf as a continued schos refuah shlema for Gabriel Simcha ben Miriam Ahuva b'seich shar chayle Yisrael. We pick it up two lines from the wide lines. Amar Rabibi, Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Ma'isa bepreda achas shel beis Rebbe. There was a story with one preda, a certain mule in Rebbe's household, that what happened, Shemisa, the mule, dies. V'shiaru chacham es dama b'revies, and the chacham measured its dam to see if it was a revius. Why? Because once it's a revius, then it is, then it gives off toma. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam shakol. So Rashi here tells us that this is the chilik between the dam versus the basar, that the basar is going to give off tumah in a smaller quantity by a kzayis, but the dam is going to give off of as a revius. And Rashi spells out why, because it's able to likra, it could congeal v'lamoid al kzayis and end as a kzayis. So that was the story. And based off of this story, must have Yitzchak bar Bisna. Hey, Rabbi Yeshua ben Beseir al dam nevila shutar. They gave testimony on the dam nevilos, which is tar. Ve'amar of Yeshua ben Beseira, and says of Yeshua ben Beseira, Ma'isahaya, there was a story. Excuse me, Ma'isahaya, there was a story. They were spearing the wild donkeys to feed the lions in the king's military. Sounds exciting. No, excuse me. And the Oile Regalim, they're passing by, and in the middle of this slaughter festival to have these wild donkeys for the king's lion, excuse me, and they were up to their knees in dam, and amru lahem davar. Says the Gemara, Chazal didn't say anything to them. Why? Seemingly because it does not convey any toma, even though there was loads and loads and loads of dam. So asks the Gemara, I don't understand. We just said once there's a revius of dam, it's conveys toma. We see from the story now. Ishtik, he was quiet. He did not have an answer to the kasha. Why did you not answer the following? Excuse me, why didn't you answer? So he said, how can I respond? Your life will hang in the balance. This is one who takes the grain from year to year, from Friday to Friday, excuse me, to Erev Shabbos, Erev Shabbos. You will not be sure of your life. No, I skipped. Go back. One more time. This is one buys grain, Miyashana Lashana. And you'll be a scared night and day. That refers to what? Do not trust in your life. This is someone who relies on the baker. So says the Gemara, so why didn't I respond? As we turn over to Kavdal and Aleph, he says, you know why? Because Ahu Gavra was the Helig Palter. That guy was the baker. Ahu Gavra And that man, referring to himself, Abalter Samach, he relies on the baker for bread. And if he relies on the baker for bread, therefore, I cannot answer the kasha. As Rashi says, what's the nikuda? The nikuda is the indaitim yushav lashavla. He was so strapped for cash, he didn't have the das, the presence of mind to think of a teretz. So says the Gemara, okay, so tachlis ma'yav. What is the maskana? Was there ever a teretz to the kasha? Says the Gemara, Rav Yosef, Rav Yehuda Marina, Teveni Sa Havai. Rav Yehuda was the halachic authority of the Devei Nisa. And he paskined according to his own memra, which was, it depends if there was a revius of dam. Titania, Rav Yehuda Aimer, Shisha Devam Mikula Beisham Mechumer Beisilel. Tam Nevelois Beisham Metarim Beisil Metamim. Amris Rav Yehuda Avkish Tamu Beisil Tamu Elo. Berivius Hal Yachlikor Shlamad Al Kizayis. So Lamaisa says the Gemara, we go with Shitas Beisilel, which what, as Rashi points out, Metamim Bedam Nevelois, and these are one of the things. One of the Shisha Dvarim, says the Gemara, of the Kulei Beis Shamrai, because Beis Shamrai would say there's no Tama, and the Chumrei Beis Hillel. And we continue with the Mishnah. The Mishnah 10 line down to Kuftalit Amid Aleph, Ein Misnadvim. Ein Misnadvim. Lug Shnayim Vechamisha. One does not donate Nisachim of 1, 2, or 5 lugim. Why? Because the nedava of Nisachim are brought together with karbanos. And as Rashi articulates, Shalem Matzinu Minchas Nisachim, we don't find such a mincha of a lug Shnayim V'chamisha. But you're able to be Nisnadvim, Shloisha wide, Chazu Lekeves, V'arba La'ayil. And therefore, some quantities have karbanos to bring with it. Others do not. So those that do not, you cannot bring. Aval, however, misnadvim shleisha v'arba v'shisha mishisha l'mayila. You could, yes, be nisnadev 3, 4, or 6 lugin, and any amount of 6 and higher. Any amount of 6 and higher. Frag the Gemara yibayilehu yesh kevel nisachim oy in kevel nisachim. A fundamental shaila, an isolated shaila. Is there keva? Is there a kvias? Is there a fixed amount for nisachim? Meaning, does he have to bring the entire amount at one time? Or it is not a fixed amount, and he can bring whatever he wants, as Rashi articulates. Oimer, someone says, Rashi's directly crossing the Rashis. Is there a keva that he has to bring everything he said? It's called one carbon. Each part as much as he wants. Says the Gemara, what's the case? The case is he made a nedava that he wants to bring 5 lugin. So he amrin keva nesachim. What if it's no keva then? He could bring 4, which is the chazilayol. He could bring 4 that goes together with an ayol. Vidach, another one, having nidava. Could be a stam nidava. But if there is kava, then he cannot do it until he brings the full 5. Says the Gemara, Mai, what is the halacha? Someone said, the Mishnah said, 6 for nidava, and we analyzed the Mishnah. And we said, can I get me? For what are these 6 donating for? What are these 6 donating for? And we said over there, can I get Moiser Achatas? One of them, again, this is not our Mishnah, This is based on the Mishnah in Shkolim, that there were 13 boxes, 13 chests in the Azara. 7 of them were for specific karbanos, and 6 of them were there to bring nidavais to bring money, for nidavais, for voluntary karbanos of the tzibur. So what are these 6 for? Kenegin Meiser Chatos. One of them is for the excess of the chatos. U'meiser Hashem, U'meiser Hashem Nazir, Moshe Atzer, Moshe Moshe Mkinim, Moshe Minchas Chayte. So that's the 6 chests that are sitting there in the Azar. So what's the raya? Vim Isa says Abaya. Now, if it's true that there's no keva, you can bring as much as you want. Therefore, l'taki shefer achrina. We should have another shefer. We should have another box for what? Kenegin meiser nesachim. Because there's always going to be this leftover nesachim. Because you can bring any amount, then the excess you would dump into that box. So says Abaye, the fact that there's only 6 and not more of these chests shows us that it must be yesh keval nesachim. They have to bring it all at once. Says the Gemara, no, Hanach linidvas sibur azli. The money in the boxes go for the nidava of the tzibur, which are not so common, and therefore you stored it for the future, and that's why there was a chest, because they had to hold on to the cash. But over here, if I have an extra look of the nisachim, shchichi, it's pretty common. Why? Because most karbanos lemaisa are required together with the nisachim. Therefore, efshad the mitzdarfi. Demar, you combine 2 people's lugin, badi adadi, vekarvi. So the reason there's not a specific place for these items is because you didn't need to store them as they were brought pretty much one after another. Says Abaye, says Rav, I'll bring you a raya maravata shema. Says the pasuk in Bamidbar, Ezrach. Kol Ezrach v'Yisrael. Nope. Kol Ezrach yaseh kachas il akav yishen v'ich lichayach l'Hashem. Every person, milame, the teach Hashem is not in his sachem, you're allowed to bring in a dava, neder. Nope, a nedava of nesachim. The kaman, how much you allowed to donate? Shloishes lugin, 3 lugin u'minayin. Shemaitzel ha'isef ha'isef tamaloi mariyah yachli yifachot. I would think you could do even less than 3 lugin tamaloi markach. So says Rava, what does this brisa mean? Ma Yosef. What does the brisa mean that you're allowed to add? Ilem arba v'shisha. If you're going to tell me that you add 4 or 6 lugin, so it's pashit. I wouldn't need a special pasuk to tell me I can bring 4 or 6. It's a davar pashit because it's a carbon that needs 4 or 6 lugin. So I wouldn't need a pasuk for that. Elalav, you know what the pasuk teaches me? Chamisha. The pasuk teaches me 5 lugin ushmamina in keval nesachim. And therefore, let's bring a raya that there's no keva. Why? Because I bring 5, there's no carbon that requires 5. And there's no carbon that requires 5. Therefore, must be that you're bringing that in 2 shots, 4 by themselves, and the 5th is going to be a nidava, shma, mina. This is a raya. But what's the kasha? The kasha is what we're all wondering, that we think 5. Don't I remember somewhere it said you can't bring 5? Yes! Our Mishnah! 8 lines from the bottom, Amar Rav Ashi. But our Mishnah didn't say like this. Ein miznad ve'in log shnayim v'chamisha. Our Mishnah said you cannot donate 1, 2, or 5. Kadani chamisha dom yadishnayim. So it's not just stam, it says you can't donate 5. It's 5 like 2. Mashnayim, why? Dol chazu klal. Chamisha nami dol chazu klal. So you can't tell me, oh, you can donate 5 and bring it in 2 parts. No. The Mishnah seemingly indicates you're not allowed to do that. Responds the Gemara, no, midiaria, ha kedisa, v'ha kedisa. 5 is not necessarily like 2. And as much as that 2, none of them can be brought, but 5, you could do that. You could bring 4, and then the 5th will be a for the tzibur, and therefore there is no raya. So that's the teretz of a rava of ein keval and esachim, that you bring them in different parts. Amar Abaye, another day and 3 lines to the bottom. Intim Salayim. If you're going to tell me, says Abaye, like Rava just proved, Ein Kevel Nesachim, Ein Kevel Nesachim, then I don't have a kasha. But Intim Salayim, Yesh Kevel Nesachim, on the other side of the Shaila, Adasarab Shitali. Then, If you're going to bring up to 10, then I understand what the halacha would be. If you only be allowed to bring up to 10 lugin, then I would understand. However, but if you donate 11 lugin, then mi bayili. Then says Abayo, on the tzad yesh keval nisachim, and one says he wants to donate 11 lugin. Says Abaya, now it's shver to me. Mi bayili, I have the following shaila as we turn over to Kov Dalet Amud Beis. My Gavra l'shnei parim kamechavin, v'adim amaliu lo karvi. Is his kavana for 2 bulls, 2 aisles, which is what? Which is 12 lugin, 6 apiece. And therefore, even though he said 11, he has to wait to get the 12th and then bring it. Or maybe his kavana is that he has shnei elim, 2 rams, v'keves echad, and 1 lamb, and therefore he could, yes, use them without adding on anything. Trey michan mina v'chan mina amrinon oilai. So it says Abayi on the side of Yesh Kava would have the following shaila, and says the Gemara, "My teku." This is one we're going to have to take up with Eliyahu Hanavi b'siyata dishmaya. And now we wrap up the perek with a Mishnah that's going to pivoting off of our discussion of a yayin for nisachim. We're going to go on to shemen for nisachim. Says the Mishnah, misnadvin yayin ve'nisnadvin shemen. Could donate wine, but not shemen. Divi Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Tarfin Amar, no, misnadvin shemen. Amar Rav Tarfin, ma matzina b'yayin shu ba chayva uba nedava. Yayin could be either av shemen shu ba chayva, could as well be ba nedava. Amar Eloi Rabbi Akiva. Amar Loi, Rabbi Akiva says Loi, no. Amar b'yayin, shkein karavim chayvasai, b'fnei atzmai, by wine. Wine can, yes, be brought as an adava. Why? Because there's a case of yayin as a chiyav b'fnei atzmai. Excuse me. Timer b'shemen. How can you bring a riot from there to oil? She'enoi karavim chayvasai b'fnei atzmai. There's no case of shem b'fnei atzmai. So that is Rabbi Akiva's rebuttal. Ends the Mishnah, Ein Shnai Misnadvin Isaran Echad. 2 people cannot donate 1 Isaran, but Avol Misnadvin Oilo Shlamim Va'oif Afilu Preda Achas. But they could be Misnadv and Oil and a Shlamim together, but with regarding an Oif, they could bring even a Preda Achas, 1 little fledgling, 1 little oaf. Says the Gemara, Amar Rava. Says Rava, Mi Divrei Shneim Nilmat. Says Rava from Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Tarfon from the Mishnah, you know what I learn? You're allowed to bring minchas nisachim every day. Even if it does not accompany an animal, you're allowed to bring it on its own. Says Gemara Pshita. Avada, why not? So minchas rachmana hani chamisha menachos in tefillah. I would think that klape minchas nedava, there were 5 types mentioned in Vayikra. Minchas Soilas, Minchas Machvas, Minchas Barcheshes, Minchas Mafa, Minchas Rikikin. So I would think maybe only those 5. But Tfeiloi, but Astam, Minchas Nesachim, not. Kamash Milan, Hani Mili Bistam, Avlecha the Barish Barish. Kamash Milan, that the Pasuk is teaching us when you said it's Tam, but if you are Mefarish, you said this is what you're going to bring, a Minchas Nesachim, you would, yes, be allowed to bring it. And now we wrap up the parak with the end of the Mishnah that taught us Ein Shnayim Misnadvim, 1 Isarin. Says the Gemara, my time, what is the reason that 1 Isarin, 1 Mincha cannot be brought together? Ilema. If you're going to tell me that the reason is Ilema, and I'm sorry, I didn't speak out in the Mishnah. When the Mishnah said Isarain Echad, we should have spoken out. What that meant was, what is an Isarain? Of course, that is the Karban Mincha. So what's the reason now? Says the Gemara on the second line. Elaim of the reason is Mishav Dachsev Takriv Oila Takriv. Mincha you should bring in the singular. Oila Nami Oksiv Yakriv. El Oila my time away. Let it bring the Oila with someone else. Dachsev Oila Seichem. Mincha Nami Oksiv Mincha Seichem. So what's the chilik? El Mishav Dachsev Ba Nefesh. By the Mincha it says Nefesh in the singular. Says the Gemara, Tanam Yacha, bring your raya, Rabbi Yomer, Shayakov Karbana, L'chol Nidreim, L'chol Nidvaisem, Shayakov Lashem, HaKol Ba'in B'Shotfis. We learn out from here that everything can be brought B'Shotfis. Lo Yisilek HaKosev, Elo Mincha. The Torah only excluded the Mincha, Shenemer, Nefesh. An explicit raya, just like we just saw, that Lamaisa, when it comes to Mincha, learned out from Nefesh, it can only be brought on your own. Amar Rav Yitzchak, and they manishtan is mincha. Manishtan. Why is it mincha different than everyone nefesh? Amar Hakadosh Baruch Hu, midar golavi mincha. Ani malani alav kilu ikrim nafshoy lefanai. It says nefesh to teach us if he brought his ganze nefesh in front of me. Amar Rav Yitzchak, manishtan is mincha shemer b'chamisha minei tigon. Halalu. Why by the mincha does it say these 5 types of preparing it, dishes, oil dishes? Mashal mel basadam shaslo I have a suda. Yada by shuani. Amrlai asali made chamisha minei tigin k'desha anamimcha. So he says to him, he can't bring him a whole constant animal. So he says, bring me one of these 5 dishes. It's like a nicer way, not just telling the ani, bring me something. It's a nicer way of giving him options of ways of bringing the minchas ani. Hadjon Allah Menachos v'nesachim. And we dive into the final parak over here of Menachos, continuing the Nadarim. But what if you did not specify and you don't remember afterwards? Sak the Heilige Mishnah, Harei Alai Yisarain. Someone says it's incumbent upon me to bring in Yisarain, which we just learned, of course, means a mincha. Yavi Echad. He brings 1 Yisarain. Esrei Nois, extend the plural. Yavi Shnayim. Pirashti. Someone says, I'm going to bring a mincha, and I specified a definitive number. It's Pirashti, I explained. Paveni Yodiana, remember my Pirashti, Yavi Shishim. Yisarain. Then what? You bring the maximum. You don't remember what you said? You got to pay up in full. It's like you lose your parking ticket. You got to pay up for the max time. So you bring 60, as we learned, as the max. Harei mincha. Someone says, I'm bring a mincha, doesn't say what type. Yavi Eza Shiyirta. Rav Yudaimer, Yavi minchas hasoyla, shim yuchedesh minchas. Again, you got to bring the best. Mincha, oy min mincha. Someone says, din number 4, I'm going to bring a mincha or a min mincha. Yavi achas, he brings 1. Menachos, min minachos. Yavi shtayim. Perashti, v'nodeizim, emshi perashti. Yavi chamishas, you have to bring all 5 types of menachos. Perashti, mincha shel esroinim. V'eni idea kama birashi. I explained I'm going to bring a mincha with 10. He's trying to, I don't remember how much. Which one? Yavi shishim. Then you have to bring. No, I said this wrong. Pirashi mincha shel, I specified to bring a mincha of a definitive of a pirush of a specific number. But I just don't remember how much. Then you bring 60 shishin isar. Rabbi Yomer Yavi mincha shel esrei nois me'echad v'ad shishim. He brings 60 separate menachos of esrei nois. He brings 1, he brings 2, he brings 3, he brings 4, all the way up to 60. Because then he for sure fulfilled that which he said. We'll pick it up from here. The siyata dishmaya.